Our scripture reading today is from the book of Ruth, chapter 3, verses 1 through 11. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you, where you will be well provided for." Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor. But don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Lee, thank you so much. Before I start digging into that word, just a couple of housekeeping items. The first, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the people who are joining us on Facebook Live right now. And so welcome to you all, wherever you are. We're glad you're part of our worshiping congregation today and hope all is well with you. And then, if you don't mind, at some point, taking out your phones, if you haven't already, point them at that QR code in front of you. That takes you to an app. And on that app, two things in particular I want you to take note of. One is a connections card that you can fill out there on your phone and let us know a little bit about yourself, share a prayer request, give us an email address. And then also on that app, there is a link to a secure, touchless way that you can give your offering or your tithe. We don't pass baskets or anything here or plates. We ask that you would do it this way so that we can all kind of keep safe. And if you brought, however, your own offering in hand, or if you'd prefer to use the paper card, connections card in front of you, thanks for doing that. And you can put both of those things in a drop box in the back, and then there's one just right over here. And we're just grateful that you're here. By the way, you may have noticed, some of you who use the digital bulletin, it's wrong because we are in between staff people right now, and so it hasn't been updated for a couple of weeks. We hope to change that because we have a new staff person coming on board this week. Please join me in saying welcome to one of us. Actually, she's in the choir right now. Dawn Davidson is going to be our new... Dawn's going to be our new church administrator, and we are excited to have her. Believe me, we are excited to have you on board because we've been vacant here for a couple of weeks. So that's good news. So let's dig in. I am starting a new series this week on obscure, what I like to call don't blink books of the Bible. In other words, if you blink, you might miss them, and you don't want to miss them. They may be small or they may be tucked away, and if you're flipping through the Bible, you're not going to find them, but they have a great message. And actually, each one of them has a message that they specialize in that you're going to miss if you don't know about these books. And so here's where we're going to go. We're going to start with Ruth. And if you don't know Ruth, then you're going to miss out on true love. And next we're going to go to Lamentations in the Old Testament, because if you don't know Lamentations, you won't know how to pray honestly. Obadiah, Goodness gracious, Obadiah. Has anybody ever heard a message on Obadiah? We're going to do Obadiah, because if you don't know Obadiah, pride will get the best of you. Then we're going to switch to the New Testament, a couple that are in the New Testament. One is Titus. If you don't know Titus, you won't know how to say no. And then finally, Jude, right before Revelation in the Bible, a little one-chapter book. If you don't know Jude, you'll choose the wrong friends. So if those sound like issues that are relevant for your life, then join us over the next 5 weeks. But let's get started. Let's go to the book of Ruth. And here's where you find Ruth. Some of you may not be familiar with your Bible and how it's laid out. This is the Old Testament. And as you can see, Ruth, we're missing a Torah, aren't we? Genesis, Exodus, no, Numbers should be in there. Well, anyway, to the right of that, you'll see Ruth is circled. And Ruth is an obscure book. People know the story, but it's kind of hard to find because it's smushed in between two bigger books, Joshua on one end and 1 Samuel on the other. So if you're just flipping through, it's very easy to miss Ruth altogether. But you don't want to miss Ruth, because Ruth is amazing. It tells the story of a woman named Naomi. Naomi is a Jewish woman, and she and her husband live in Bethlehem. Maybe you've heard of that town. And they are presumably farmers, but what happens is there's a drought, a horrible drought, and a famine that comes along with it, making it very difficult to continue to live in Judea, where they live. And so they make the fateful decision that they're going to pull up stakes and they're going to move. And not only move, they're going to move to a different country. They're going to move across the border to a country by the name of Moab. Interesting, traditional enemies of the Jews. But apparently this drought isn't touching Moab, and so they go and they establish themselves, and they take their 2 sons with them. Well, while they're in Moab and they're living their life, these 2 sons grow up and they marry. Both of them marry Moabite women, one of whom is named Ruth. Well, tragedy strikes. The unthinkable happens. Somehow, some way, we don't know what happens, but all 3 of the men of this family die. We don't know if it was all together or over time, but the fact is that Naomi's husband dies, leaving her a widow, and then both of their sons die, leaving these 2 Moabite women as widows. And so Naomi is again faced with a terrible choice. What am I going to do? She decides that really her only recourse is to move back, to go back to Bethlehem, to where her family ties are, to where her ancestral land is. That's all that she can cling on to. Now, the 2 Moabite women, there's no legal or social obligation on them to stay with Naomi. Their family's in Moab, and so traditionally and customarily, they would stay and be taken in by their own families. But Ruth decides to stay with Naomi. This is an incredible choice. Totally illogical, and no obligation to do this, but she makes the choice, I am going to stay with Naomi. And she does it as she says these incredible words. This is from Ruth chapter 1. And Ruth says to Naomi, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. So not only is she going to go with Naomi, she's leaving everything behind. She's all in terms of moving into this new country. What a courageous choice. So they make the journey, Naomi and Ruth, back to Bethlehem. They are desperately poor. And as they reach Bethlehem, one of the first things that has to be taken care of is finding food so they can survive. Well, there was a practice at the time that local farmers would, during the harvest time, leave the edges of the field unharvested so that the poor could, it was basically the soup kitchen, so they could come in, they could collect, they could harvest the food themselves, and they could keep whatever they harvested. So Ruth goes there to get food for both her and Naomi. She's working in the fields, and just by happenstance, she meets the owner of the field. And he happens to be the most single and eligible bachelor in the whole town. His name is Boaz. And he notices Ruth, how hard she's working. He hears the story about why she's there, the fact that she's a Moabite woman and she's there. He's impressed with that story, so he blesses her a little bit extra and gives her a little bit more to take home to Naomi. So she goes home and she tells Naomi everything that happens. She tells Naomi about Boaz, and the wheels are turning in Naomi's mind. This may be our chance. And so she tells Ruth, and they put together a plan that there's going to be a little late night rendezvous between Ruth and Boaz, and the location's going to be the threshing floor. So this is the place where basically the harvest is processed. And there's piles of grain, and they have to protect the grain, so they usually sleep there with the grain. But because the harvest is completed, and they're having a party. So there's a little bit of partying going on. Boaz gets a little bit tipsy, and so he goes to sleep, and Naomi comes and lies down next to him. And basically what she does in that moment sends a very clear message to Boaz that Ruth is asking him to ask her to marry him. And he wants to. He really wants to get married to Ruth, but he says, Ruth, there's a problem. As much as I want to do that, there's somebody closer to your family line. There's a next of kin who's closer than me. See, by the way, Boaz is related to Naomi's husband. And that comes customarily with some responsibilities, that if one becomes a widow, that you take on the care for that family. And so Boaz is saying, I'd love to do this, but I can't. There's somebody else. But Boaz, now he comes to the fore, and he starts to kind of get things in place where he meets with this next of kin, this guy who stands to inherit. And he says, he brings this guy in front of the whole town. The town council is deciding this. All the elders are there, and Boaz stands up and he tells the guy, hey, Naomi is here. She has an inheritance, ancestral land, and that's yours. If you want it, you're the next of kin. You can take this on. And he's going, yeah, I could use some more land. Works for me. But Boaz says, oh, by the way, according to our Jewish laws, you also have to marry the son's wife so that the family name will go on. You have to marry Ruth, in other words. And he says, dude, I'm out. I got too many mouths to feed already. I don't want to get married at this point in my life. I'm gonna step aside. And Boaz, then, having kind of put this all together, acting very shrewdly so that he can win Ruth, he's able to. And they get married. And they have a child, a son, whose name is Obed. It's such a sweet story. Such a lovely story. Did you even know this story was in the Bible? It's just lovely. But it also carries some historical and therefore theological weight. Obed, we find out at the end of Ruth, turns out to be the grandfather of a certain King David. And if you were a Jew, then you notice that name, because this is a central, pivotal figure in the history of the Jewish people in the Old Testament. His lineage carried with it a lot of promise that applies for us today. And so then if you're a Christian, you really pay attention to King David, because you know that a direct descendant of King David is who? Jesus. In fact, you can take a look at Matthew chapter 1, which has the genealogy of Jesus. And when the section that comes before King David, you can see the name. You can see Boaz, you can see Obed. And by the way, another name was added to bring honor to this Moabitess woman. Ruth is mentioned in Matthew chapter 1 in the genealogy of Jesus. So this carries some weight for us as well. But really what we're talking about here is a love story. It's a story about true love. And I have a question for you. Do you believe in true love? Do you believe that true love exists? If you do, just be bold. Raise your hand. Say, yeah, I believe in true love. That's a pretty good number of you. Well, a survey asked the question of Americans, do you believe in true love? How many people do you believe in true love? 87% of the respondents said they believe in true love. And 2/3 of that number said that they believed in true love because they have actually experienced it for themselves. 2/3 of Americans agreeing on something. That is amazing. 87% of Americans can agree on the fact that there is true love. Thank the Lord that neither political party has made true love a part of their platform, because the other one would then say, I don't believe in true love. It's a conspiracy, deep state. Yeah, we can agree on true love. True love is a thing. True love is a thing. And the Bible certainly says that true love exists, that true love is a thing. I could have read you 100 passages that talk about love in the Bible, but I picked out 3 that really stand out, I think. The first one is from the love song of the Bible, the love poem of the Bible, Song of Solomon. And I love this line. It says there, set me, this is a woman talking to a man, and they are in love. And she says, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is as strong as death. Its jealousy is fierce as the grave. Many waters cannot quench love. Floods cannot drown it. If a man offered in exchange for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly scorned. It wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't nearly replace the value of true love. And then from the New Testament, this lovely passage from 1 Corinthians. This is called the love chapter by some, 1 Corinthians 13. And it says, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but it rejoices with the truth. And at the end of that chapter, it says, now these 3, faith, hope, and love abide. And the greatest of these is love. The greatest thing in God's plan is true love. And that's maybe what Jesus is referring to in Mark chapter 10, when he talks about 2 people shall become one flesh. So they are no longer 2, but they are one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no one separate. True love. And Ruth is just a great story about true love triumphing, winning, carrying the day. But it also has some lessons for us. It tells us, I think, how to recognize true love when it's in front of you. What does true love really look like? And I think it also has something to teach us about how, if we have true love, how do we hang on to it? How do we maintain it? How can it endure in our relationships? So there are 4 things, I think, that come out of the book of Ruth that have to do with lessons that Ruth teaches us about true love. And the first is that true love often comes from left field. It often comes out of the blue. It's not something we can plan for. It's not something we can schedule. It's not something that is going to go exactly the way we expect it to. I mean, of all the women in Bethlehem that probably wanted to be Mrs. Boaz, the most eligible bachelor, single guy in town, a landowner, wealthy, good guy, they probably didn't pick Ruth. Ruth, a poor woman, a foreign woman, and a widow. On top of all that, she would have been low down the list, but that did not matter. Ruth and Boaz met in that field, and the connection was made, and it blossomed into true love in a very short time. And I can tell you, I am a testament myself to true love hitting at a time when you least expect it. I was coming off a relationship. I had just graduated from seminary. I was starting my professional career for the first time. And having a relationship, dating anyone at that time, farthest thing from my mind. I mean, it was a back burner issue because I was focused on starting my ministry. My very first calling was just a week or so away, and I was anxious to get started with everything that I've been going to school for and training for. It was time to go out there and get it done. And then in the midst of all that, whammo, Fellowship Hall, after church at Gashland Presbyterian Church. There she was, and nothing was ever the same. Yeah. So maybe you have a true love coming out of left field story. Unexpected, coming together. That's the way it often works out. Yeah, when you least expect it. Second thing I think that Ruth is teaching us about true love is that true love is built on kindness and character and not on physical and even sexual attraction. There have been some commentators who have tried to read into the whole late night at the threshing floor thing, and they're reading some of the cues, and they're kind of saying, yeah, I mean, they hooked up on the threshing floor. There was a sexual encounter that happened between Ruth and Boaz there, and that's what kind of got it all started, that physical attraction. But others have come along and said, you know, that's not what the text says. There's really nothing in the text. There's nothing in the historical setting of this story to interpret anything other than 2 people met. And in the course of the meeting, Boaz was incredibly inspired, and he admired Ruth's kindness and his character. In fact, he uses a word, I don't know if you heard it when Lee was reading. He says something to the effect, Lee, that Boaz admires Ruth for her noble character, her worthiness, in other words. He points that out specifically. And the word he uses in the Hebrew language is very interesting. It's the same word that's used to describe an army. Being strong, well-prepared, well-equipped, and brave. What Boaz is saying is, I see that strength in you, Ruth. I see that bravery in you. I see the loyalty that you have exhibited towards your mother-in-law when you had no obligation to show it. I see the way that you will do whatever it takes for not only you to survive, but the people that you love. I have seen how you will seize opportunities boldly, not worrying about what everybody else is saying. You will do what's right and you'll stand up for it, and you will carry it through. Boaz just admires Ruth, and that is the foundation of his love for her. My friends, if you are looking for true love, look for love that is based on character. It's based on kindness. Ruth may have been quite a looker. I don't know. She may have been very good looking. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What attracted Boaz to her was her character. Third thing I think Ruth is teaching us is that love does not always come easy. Sometimes you have to fight for love. And Boaz certainly had to fight to gain Ruth. There was this next of kin standing in the way, and he used everything at his disposal to make sure that he was the one in the end who had Ruth's hand. There's a psychologist that I read this past week. Her name is Dr. Randy Gunther. She is a marriage and family specialist. She's a clinical psychologist. And she said that there are some threats that occur in a relationship which can begin to bleed out the true love, start to hinder it. And I have a list. I wished I'd made a slide of this, so I'm just going to read them out, and maybe some of you want to write them down. The threats that to true love that come up in relationships. The first is disconnect, starting to be disconnected from each other. Dissing, you know what I mean by that? Dissing, when you're talking bad to the other person, when you're disrespecting them verbally. Domination, where one sort of dominates the whole relationship and there's a lot of control issues. Mistrust, the loss of trust. Staleness, just kind of getting routine and not having those special times anymore. And then this one was interesting. Diminishing nostalgia. In other words, those memories of the past don't hold as much power for you. They don't bring as much joy, those times that you had in the past. So let me read them again. These are the things that are threats to a relationship, and you have to fight to keep a true love going. You have to fight against disconnect, fight against dissing, domination, mistrust, staleness, and diminishing nostalgia. In fact, a quote from the article that I thought was helpful, and I do have that on the screen. Dr. Gunther writes, "When you can be courageous enough to face these warning signs of diminishing intimacy before they get out of hand, it will be easier for you and your partner to turn things around. Intimacy is the act of living in the heart of your beloved." What a line that is. Intimacy is the act of living in the heart of your beloved. That's true love. When relationships move from intertwined to parallel, that bond is weakened. And maybe that's why Jesus said that the essence of true love is when two people become one. That oneness they share. And then finally, Ruth teaches us that true love always occurs within the context of God's greater plan. So God had a greater plan for redemption history through Ruth and Boaz coming together and finding true love. And the same is absolutely true for you. It's true for you. It's true for anybody here that is in that kind of relationship. True love plays a part in God's greater plan. God's love, God's own love, has come to you for you to share and then fills you up to overflowing so that it flows out into the lives of others. Children, grandchildren, people in your neighborhood, people you work with, people who go to your school, people that are even friends or strangers. These are people that God wants your experience of true love to touch so that they know what it looks like. And they can expect the same thing for themselves by God's grace. And so people that are in a relationship of true love, I believe every once in a while have to step aside and step out and ask themselves the question, what is God's plan for us? How does God want to use us? What's the mission that we have as two people experiencing oneness so that we can bless others? That's God's plan for us. So here's your homework. Ready for some homework this week? Here's what I want to challenge you to do. Somebody said no. That was funny. That had to be you, Jack. He said, I'm done with homework, man. School's out. No homework. All right. The first is, if there is a Boaz or a Ruth in your life who has blessed you with true love or has shown you what true love looks like, send them a note. Give them an affirmation. Say thank you through a message or some contact that you make with them. Tell them, thank you for being a Boaz. Thank you for being a Ruth in my life. It has made a difference. It's shown me what true love really looks like, and I am grateful. If you know someone who's on the lookout for true love, they would like to find it in their life, then my challenge to you is be ready to share with them the book of Ruth. Just say, I know it's coming from the Bible, and that may not interest you, but this is a relevant story. And also share with them the 4 things that we talked about that Ruth teaches us, so that they can kind of look for how love comes in unplanned and unexpected ways, how love is built on character and kindness instead of attraction, how love is something you have to fight for, and how love is a part of God's greater plan. And then finally, if you're looking for true love yourself, well, just get to know the story. And through that story, get to know the God that already has shown true love to you deeply and intimately, and let that be the foundation for what you're looking for. Make sure you're looking for what God has already given you. That's God's plan for your true love. All right.